The shovel didn't belong to her. That much he knew. She was small, knees scraped, dress stiff with dry dirt. She gripped the wooden handle like it bit her. The grave beside her was shallow, not enough to hold much, but enough to mean something. The grave digger stepped forward and stopped, one boot in mud, one on a hard pan. "You lost?" She didn't answer. He looked at the hole. I looked at her. "You dig that?" She nodded. "Why?" She blinked slowly. "She told me to." "Who?" "My mama." He stared at the grave again. "Where is she?" The girl didn't move. "Gone." He squinted. The sun was gone, just the field and the wind, a breath of ash in the air. "What's your name?" She said nothing. He tried again. "You from town?" She shook her head. "You got folk here?" Another shake. "You want to come back with me?" She looked down at her hands, then back at the dirt. "She said to wait here." "For who?" She looked at him like it was obvious. "For whoever put her there last time." The gravedigger didn't answer that. His knees cracked as he crouched, slow, careful. He leaned on his own rusted spade, looked into the girl's hole. It was just wide enough for a body. "You mean someone buried her before?" She came back, dug out. "Your mama." She nodded. But she didn't stay long. The wind lifted her hair. She didn't flinch. "Did you sleep out here last night?" "I didn't sleep." "Are you hungry?" She didn't answer. Her eyes drifted to the far hill. She said the men still wear the same boots. He followed her gaze. Empty hills, dust rising in the distance. "You remember their faces?" She nodded. Just their voices and the way the shovel sounded. He felt something cold crawl up the side of his ribs. He stood, too fast. His spine popped. "You'll come with me," he muttered. "No." "You can't stay." She said, "I got to." "She's gone." "She's underneath," the girl said. "Part of her." He looked again at the hole, barely 4 feet, maybe less. "You don't know what you're doing." She looked at him. Still, quiet, calm. "I do." He exhaled through his nose, pulled his gloves from his belt. "Are you planning to stay until someone shows up?" "I'll know them when they come." "You planning to kill 'em?" "No," she said. "Just name them." He frowned. "Name 'em to who?" She didn't say anything. He looked up at the sky, then back at her. "You know how many graves I've dug?" She didn't answer. "I know what a waiting girl looks like, and you ain't waiting for your mama." Silence, then her voice, dry as ash. "You buried her too." His jaw tightened. "You remember?" "I remember the boots," she whispered. "You didn't look at her face." He stepped back. The sun was low now, gold light cutting through. The stalks, the shovel glinted in her hand like something older than either of them. "You think I put her there?" "I think you watched," she said, and watched quietly. The gravedigger looked down at his boots, the same ones he wore that winter, when the sheriff said nothing would come of it. "You don't know what happened." "I know what she said." "She's dead." "She's tired," the girl said. "Not dead." He looked away. "You don't know what it cost," he muttered. The girl stepped forward, just one step, the shovel still pointed down. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm here." He touched the brim of his hat, pulled it low. The sweat down his spine felt like ice now. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to remember." He turned, started back toward the fence. "You gonna leave me here?" "You ain't mine to take." "She was," the girl said. He stopped. The cicadas fell quiet. He turned, slow. "What did you say?" "She was yours. That's what she told me. Said you knew her first." He swallowed. "You're lying." "No." "She never said that." "She said you stood by. Said you watched him do it. Said you heard her." His hands balled into fists. "You weren't there." "I hear her now." "Stop. She told me what they did. Said it was cold. Said the dirt hurt." He stepped forward. "She said you held the rope." He raised his voice. "I never touched her." The girl just stared. "I didn't," he said again, quieter. "She forgave you." He shook his head. "Said you were scared. Said that's worse." He turned, spit into the dirt. "You're going to get yourself killed staying out here." "I ain't scared." "You don't know what men do." "I know what they did to her." He didn't answer. She lowered the shovel into the hole. "She told me what it felt like when the air ran out." He closed his eyes. She said she screamed, said no one came. He started walking. She remembers your boots. He walked faster. She doesn't blame you. The girl called, but she wants you to dig. He didn't stop. By the time he reached the road, the wind had picked up again. Sharp, dry. He looked once over his shoulder. The girl hadn't moved. She stood beside the grave, one hand on the shovel, eyes on the horizon, like she'd done it before, like she'd be there long after he wasn't. The girl hadn't moved, not even when the sun went down. By morning, word had spread. They came in pairs, church women first, then men with belts creaking and hands on hips. A few kids, bare-kneed and curious, stood at the fence line whispering. The sheriff came last. Hat low, eyes narrower than usual. She was still by the hole, one hand on the shovel, dirt on her cheeks. No blanket, no bag. Somebody go ask her name, one of the women said. She's not talking. Another replied. Where's she from? A man asked. No one answered. She looks like Carla, doesn't she? Whispered someone else. Or one of the Wren sisters. Can't be. The sheriff muttered. Both of them are long gone. Could be their kids. They didn't have kids. She could be from town, someone said. Could have walked in. No tracks but her own, the sheriff said. Gravedigger saw her first. They looked at the gravedigger. He just shook his head. What's she doing here? One of the churchwomen asked. It's not normal. She said she's waiting. The gravedigger muttered. For who? He looked down. Didn't say. They turned toward the girl. She hadn't blinked. Hey, sweetheart, one woman said gently, walking closer. You got a name. The girl didn't respond. Are you hungry? Cold? Nothing. You from here? She pointed at the dirt beside her. The woman glanced back at the others. She's not right. She's not wrong either, said the gravedigger. The sheriff stepped forward. You need to leave that shovel alone, girl. The girl didn't look at him. You hear me? I'm waiting. For who? The sheriff asked. She'll come back, she said. Who? The girl nodded at the dirt. Mama. She's in that hole, numbered just her words. That doesn't make sense. She said the dirt remembers. The crowd shifted uneasily. The sheriff crouched down slowly. Where's your real family? The girl blinked. Your mama ain't here. She is. Who dug the hole? I did. You're too small for that. She taught me. He exhaled. You need to come with me. Get cleaned up. Maybe eat. No. You can't stay. I have to. Why? She said someone's going to come, and I'll know them when they do. The sheriff stood up and rubbed his jaw. How long has she been out here? Since yesterday, the gravedigger said. The church women began murmuring again. She needs proper help. She needs a bed. She needs prayer. The sheriff looked at the girl one last time, then turned to the gravedigger. You bring her to town. She won't come. Then carry her. She'll fight. The sheriff sighed. Then let her rot out here. I ain't dragging no half-wild kid back if she's set on digging ghosts. She's not crazy, the gravedigger said. She's not right either. She said she knows the boots, the gravedigger added, voice low. The sheriff turned. What boots? Yours. A silence fell. I got a badge. Kids look at boots. She said she remembers the ones that stood over her mama. That's not proof. It's not nothing either. Careful, the sheriff said. I buried her mama, the gravedigger muttered. The sheriff looked up sharply. You said you didn't know the girl. I didn't, but I remember the grave. Years back. Same edge of the field. Same dirt. You dig too many holes to remember one. Some don't leave. Are you saying she's come back? I'm saying maybe she never left. The church women started praying under their breath. A man pulled his boy away from the fence. She needs to come into town, someone said, before something worse happens. She already dug a grave, another man whispered. She could be dangerous. She could be a warning. Of what? Of who we forgot. They all looked again. The girl was kneeling now, one hand pressing into the mound of dirt like it pulsed beneath her. She's just a kid, someone said. So was her mama, as far as I recall, another replied. The sheriff snapped. That's enough. She pointed at you, someone said. She points at the dirt. She doesn't trust you. She doesn't trust any of us. He stepped toward the girl. Stand up. She stayed kneeling. Now. She looked at him. Her voice is quiet. She said you wouldn't help. Who? My mama. She's not here. She's listening. I'm not doing this. You already did, the girl said. His hand dropped to his belt, not on his gun, but near it. You're making a mess. She said I wouldn't have to wait long. For what? For someone to remember. She's gone. No. The girl whispered. You just buried her wrong. A woman gasped. I ain't digging anything up, the sheriff said. You already did, she answered. You just left it breathing. The gravedigger looked at the dirt. He didn't blink. The girl stood slowly. Someone's gonna come. Someone who heard her scream. Who? The sheriff snapped. She doesn't know their names, but she remembers the sounds. A child at the fence cried. I'm done, the sheriff muttered. This is done. She said the boots were clean, but the ground wasn't. He turned back. His face was pale. She said they stepped over her like she was trash. You listen to me? She remembered you didn't look. The sheriff walked away. The church women followed. The men broke off in silence. The gravedigger stood alone as the girl sat beside the grave again. He knelt down beside her. Are you still waiting? Yes. You think she's really coming? I know she is. He nodded. You gonna stay the night again? She said she's close. He looked at the sky. The clouds had thickened. You're not cold? She said pain keeps you warm. He didn't answer. She also said not to forgive. He looked at her. Not ever. Only when they dig their own hole. The girl walked ahead of him, slow, like she already knew the path. The shovel was over her shoulder. The morning was gray. He hadn't said where they were going. She hadn't asked. When they reached the fork, she turned left. He stopped. That way's empty. She kept walking. There's nothing there. She looked back. Yes, there is. He sighed and followed. The road curved into brush and weeds. The fence had rotted. One post still leaned like it had been broken by a car or a fight. The house appeared like something half buried. One side sagged. Porch boards bent. The well out back was boarded up, but not well. She stood at the gate. Is this it? He asked. She nodded. This place ain't safe. She stepped forward. I said, she lived here. He watched her step through the broken gate and onto the porch. This place has been empty a long time. The girl looked at the door. He followed, boots crunching dry leaves. Are you sure about this? She ran her fingers over the wood. She marked this. Marked it how? With her nails. He looked closer. 4 thin scratches ran under the window. Not new, not old enough either. She said she made them while he was talking. Who? She didn't say. Inside, the house was hollow. Floor split in places. Wallpaper peeled. A small lamp lay cracked beside the hearth. The gravedigger stayed by the door. She stepped into the room like she was returning, not entering. She said it was cold when they came. He didn't answer. She said he had clean boots. He looked away. She moved to the back wall and pointed. They made her sit there. He stepped in slowly. I don't think you should be in here. She said they dragged her out the back. He looked through the busted kitchen door. The well sat 20 feet off, covered, nailed down with crooked boards. He looked at the floor. There were tracks under the dust. Old heel marks, not hers. Someone's been here. She came back. Someone. She nodded. She never left. She died, girl. She was left, not buried right. He stepped closer. What do you think you'll find here? She looked toward the stairs. She had a room. Up there. Too dangerous. I won't fall. You don't know that. She never did. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. You're saying this was your mama's house? She nodded. Who was she? The girl paused. She had another name. Before. Before what? They made her forget. The gravedigger turned. No one's lived here in over 10 years. She said it used to smell like bread. He turned toward the door again. She walked to the broken window, rubbed her hand on the sill. Why this house? He asked. She said it's where they first came. Who? She never said names, just footsteps, voices that said the same things. He stepped toward the hearth. There was a small piece of fabric tucked under the brick. He pulled it out. A child's sock, grayed by time, small enough for a baby. The girl stared. She cried when they took her, she whispered. He held it out. Yours? She took it. Hers. You had a sister? She looked at the floor. She never opened her eyes. The gravedigger swallowed. You sure this ain't a dream? She remembers it all. You keep saying she does. She's inside. He stepped away from her. I think you need rest. I'm not tired. Then food. She said not to eat until it was done. What's done? The naming. He moved to the door. I'm getting someone. She said no one helped before. I'm not them. You buried her and didn't speak. He stopped. You saw her dress and still walked away. His voice dropped. That's not true. She said you held the map. I just did what I was told. She said you folded it. He looked at the well. That thing's been boarded for a long time. She said the boards came after. After what? After the sound stopped. He stepped toward it. She said not to open it yet. I'm not opening it. He tested the nearest board. It creaked under his boot. She said when the water clears, they'll see. See what? What they lost. He turned toward her. Do you remember this place? I remember what she remembers. He exhaled. What do you want me to do? She walked toward the front door. Tell them. Tell them what? That she lived here. No one will believe it. She said they won't need to. He followed her out. The light had shifted, grayer now. Where are we going? She said to walk. Where? She said the town forgets fast. We have to remind them slowly. They walked down the old path, the fence beside them cracked and sagging. She said he knocked before he took her. Who? She said he didn't smile. That's not a name. She said the badge on his chest wasn't shiny. He stopped. She kept walking. She said he held the back of her neck. He didn't move. She said his breath smelled like salt and paper. He closed his eyes. She said she screamed into the floorboards. He looked back at the house. The roof leaned like it was listening. She said no one came. The girl didn't turn. She said you heard. He followed her again, slower this time. The wind behind them stirred the porch. A nail creaked loose. She said no one claimed her. No one did. She said they all watched. He said nothing. She said the well's not empty. He was already sitting on the porch when they returned, hat low, thumb tracing the rim of a chipped tin mug. His boots were clean, too clean. The girl saw them first. She stopped on the road. The gravedigger slowed beside her. His jaw locked. You knew he'd come. She said he would. The sheriff stood. Didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just stepped down one creaking board, heavy like something dragged. She talks too much, he said. She doesn't talk at all, the gravedigger replied. Someone's been filling her head. She's been digging it herself. The sheriff glanced at the girl. You think you know what this is? The girl looked at his boots. She told me. Told you what? She said your boots left the first print. He paused. Just a second. She said they were in her room. After the door slammed, he walked down the last 2 steps. Better be careful what you say. She said you weren't the only one. The sheriff's hand rested near his belt. Are you coaching her? She remembers, the gravedigger said. No child remembers what she's saying. She ain't a child the way you mean. Then what is she? She's what's left. The sheriff walked to the fence post. The town's getting nervous. She hasn't even spoken out loud. Loud's not the problem. She's not making things up. The sheriff didn't look at them. You bringing ghosts back, Dig? I just followed her feet. They led to a condemned house. They led to a truth. There's no truth in that place, just rot. She knew the scratch marks by the door. Kids see things. She knew what was buried behind the stove. The sheriff turned. What stove? You tell me. He didn't reply. The girl stepped forward. She said the blood dried on the wall. The sheriff snapped, Enough. She said it took days. I said, shut up. She said no one knocked. He stepped fast. Who is she to you? The girl answered first. She's my mother. The words hung between them like heat. You can't prove that, the sheriff said. She said proof doesn't rot. It waits. I could take you in. Then take me, the girl said. She said you'd try. She said you'd threaten, same way you did her. He looked at the gravedigger. Are you letting this happen? I'm just watching now. She said you watched too. The girl added. His lips twitched. She said you were behind the tree. The gravedigger didn't deny it. The sheriff walked toward the porch again. She doesn't belong here. She belongs more than you. The girl said. She's disturbing people. She's reminding them. Of lies. Of bones, she said. He turned. There's nothing left in that well. She said the cold's still in the boards. The wind picked up. A loose nail squealed in the step. You think this ends how you want, the sheriff said. She said it won't end, the girl whispered. It settles. He looked down. His boots were caked now, dust from the graveyard road. She said your boots were cleaner that night. He stepped toward her. You say that again? She said you held her arms. She said you said it'd be quick. She said you left the window open. The sheriff reached for her shoulder. The gravedigger grabbed his wrist midair. Don't. She's lying. The sheriff spat. She's remembering, the gravedigger said. She said your breath smelled like rust and chewing tobacco, the girl said. His hand jerked away. She's crazy. She's a child. She's dangerous. She's the truth. She's digging up things that don't help anyone. She's unearthing what you buried. He paced, jaw tight. She said you cried when you did it, the girl whispered. He froze. She said your tears hit the floor after. She said you didn't look at her when it was done. He turned, furious. I didn't. She said you watched her legs stop kicking. The porch cracked beneath him. She said you dug fast. The gravedigger stepped in between them. She said enough. The sheriff's eyes stayed on the girl. She's going to bring this town down. She's lifting it, the gravedigger said. Lifting it over a grave. Over the truth. I got an order. No paper will fix this. It says she goes to the county. She won't go. She doesn't belong here. She belongs to the dirt you tried to forget. The sheriff pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat. This here's got a seal. A judge's name. Don't mean nothing, the girl said. The sheriff's voice dropped. What if I make it permanent? You already did, she whispered. You just left her breathing. He stared at her. You know what a lie costs? I know what silence costs more. The sheriff pulled out his sidearm, raised it halfway, not aiming, just a reminder. She said you raised it last time too, the girl said. He froze. She said you pointed it at your own guilt. He looked away. She said you flinched after. He lowered the gun. She said it was the first time you ever did. The gravedigger leaned against the post. You done now? The sheriff stepped back, slow. She said your badge cracked when you dropped it. He didn't reply. She said you picked it up, but never wore it the same. He looked down, pressed the badge flat against his chest. It stayed crooked. I'll be back, he said. You already were, the girl answered. He walked away, boots heavy, one louder than the other. She said you limped after the well, she called. He didn't turn. They watched him vanish into the trees. The gravedigger looked at the girl. You sure? She said it's starting. Starting what? The counting. He didn't ask what that meant. She stepped up onto the porch. She said he's not the last. The sun was gone. The fields turned black. She said she had to go back. The gravedigger didn't argue. He followed her out with a lantern and his old spade. The wind had changed. The grass leaned differently. The corn whispered. She said this is where it started. The girl muttered. It started before this, he said. She said the dirt was already waiting. They reached the edge of the clearing. The grave was still there, still shallow, still open. She sat beside it, cross-legged, small. She said I should tell it again. To the dirt? She said it remembers better than people. The gravedigger stood behind her, lantern swinging from his hand. What are you saying to it? She said names don't work, just pieces. Pieces of what? Of sound. Of blood. He crouched. Are you cold? No. You want to rest? She said you don't rest near bones. He looked at the corn. You hear that? Yes. What is it? She said it's them. Who? She never learned their names. I meant the sound. I did too. He turned toward the rows. The stalks swayed even when the wind didn't move. She said they whisper when you get close. To what? The truth. He stood. She leaned closer to the grave. She said she tried to climb back up. He didn't speak. She said her fingers bled. The corn shifted again. Voices, distant, not loud enough to make out, not far enough to ignore. Someone's out there, he said. She said they always circle first. He moved his hand to the shovel. 3 figures crossed between the rows, Lantern light caught metal, belt buckles, buttons, a holster. Sheriff's men, he muttered. The girl didn't look. They're sweeping the field. She said they always come late. One man called out, "Anybody there?" Another shouted, "Got prints here." The grave digger stood tall. "Over here." Two came into view, dust on their sleeves, nervous hands. One had folded paper, the other had a gun already drawn. "She with you?" one asked. "She ain't yours to take," the grave digger said. "She is under orders." "She's under the sky." "We don't want trouble." "You brought it." "She's just a kid." "She's a grave." The girl looked up at them. "She said you helped bury her." They paused. "She said one of you turned the light out." The man with the gun shifted. "What's she talking about?" "She said you said, 'Don't look too long.'" "I don't know what she remembers the way your boots squeaked." "Shut her up," the other said. The gravedigger stepped between them. "She's not finished." The armed man's voice dropped. "We got a warrant." "Show it to the dirt," the girl said. "She said paper doesn't matter underground. She needs to come in." "Let her finish," the gravedigger said. "Finish what?" "She's naming." "We don't want names," the other muttered. "Just peace." "She said peace is for after." The gun wavered. "We can't leave her here." "She said you already did." The girl put her hand flat on the mound of dirt. Her lips moved. "She said the ground's listening now." "What's she saying?" "She's remembering." The grave digger whispered. The men stepped back. "She said your hands smelled like sugar and oil." One of them paled. "She said you laughed." The second pulled his gun too. "Enough of this." "She said the field never forgot." "You need to shut her up right now." "She said no one ever told her to stop screaming." The wind picked up. A low whistle across the corn. Leaves rustled without wind. Voices carried again. Whispers between rows. Too many for two men. "She said the ones who left came back as air." The first man snapped. "This ain't right." "She said this is what right feels like." They turned and ran, lanterns bouncing, boots kicking dust, gone into the rows. Silence again. "She said that's how they always leave." The gravedigger sat beside her. "She said the next ones won't run." "Then what?" "They'll lie." He looked at the hole. She leaned down and whispered, "She said she's almost ready." "For what?" "To rise." He didn't speak. "She said the name's coming clear." He asked quietly, "Mine?" "No." He breathed out. "But yours is close." He nodded. "She said you're the only one who dug slowly." "I didn't know." "She said you did." He rubbed his hands together. "I should have done something." "You did." "Not enough." She said it was more than most. They sat in silence. Crickets. The distant call of a night bird. Then, boots again. 3 pairs. Coming steady. Not like the others. She stood. "She said the next ones are watchers. Not takers." "Not yet." He rose, gripping the shovel. Figures emerged. One is older, 2 young. Faces in shadow. No guns, no greetings. "You come for her?" the gravedigger asked. The old one shook his head. "We came for the story." She already told it. "Not all of it." "She said it's not safe," the girl said. "We know," the old man said. "She said names burn." "They do." "Then why are you here?" "We heard the whisper." The girl stepped back. "She said you'll want to bury it again." He shook his head. "We want to listen." "She said it's too late for that." "It's never too late." The girl turned to the grave. She said to watch their feet. The grave digger looked down. None of them had boots, just bare feet on the field. He stepped between the girl and the figures. "Who are you?" "We were the ones who heard." "Hear what?" "The screams." "She said no one heard." "We did," the old one whispered. "We just didn't come." The girl stepped forward. "Then dig." They looked at each other. "You want to help?" the gravedigger asked. The old man nodded. "Then start." They knelt, bare hands in the dirt. Quiet. The corn didn't whisper now. The gravedigger's house was quiet when they returned. Too quiet. The girl stepped inside like she'd already been there. She stood in the middle of the room, turning slow. Her eyes moved to the drawer beneath the oil lamp. "She said it's here." He didn't move. "What?" "She said you kept it." He looked at the drawer, then away. "I don't know what you mean." "She said the words were never burned." He walked past her, lit the lamp with a match, watched it settle into a low flicker. There's nothing here for you. She said it's folded. Don't. She said it was written on a Sunday. He turned to her. Who told you that? She did. He stared at the drawer. His hands stayed at his sides. She said your hands shook when you read it. I never read it. You did. I found it. You opened it. I didn't read. You remembered. He sat down, slow, shoulders bent. It's just a letter. She said it's a voice. He didn't move. She said it's proof. He closed his eyes. She said if you don't read it, she'll keep whispering. He opened them again. I looked at the drawer. I kept it 'cause I couldn't throw it. Why not? She wrote it with her last breath. Then read it. He looked at her. You sure? She already knows it by heart. He reached for the drawer. The wood creaked. Inside, beneath a tattered cloth and a rusted key, was the folded paper, yellowed, soft at the edges. He held it like it could crumble. She said the ink bled. He unfolded it. He cleared his throat. You want me to say it out loud? She said someone needs to hear. He stared at the first line. To whoever finds this. She wrote that? The girl asked. She did. Keep going. My name was Ruth before it all. If they tell you differently, don't believe them. He paused. She said no one called her that after. He continued. The man who came wore a badge. He didn't knock. He told me I was in the way, said I made too much noise, said girls like me ruin the air. The room felt smaller. He wasn't alone. Two more waited outside. I think one of them cried. The other held the door. The sheriff said no one would care. The gravedigger swallowed. She said that part still hurts. He went on. He smelled like pipe ash and something rotten. He used my name, my real one, then said it didn't matter anymore. He looked at her. You sure you want me to finish? She said if you stop, the house won't sleep. He looked down again. I screamed once, then again. Then I stopped. He said quiet was better. He said he was doing me a favor, said no one else ever would. The paper trembled. When he was done, he spit beside my bed, said I should thank him. I didn't. I didn't even cry. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. If you find this, please don't let them forget. I tried to fight. I tried to remember my own name. He took that too. The girl's voice was barely above a whisper. Keep going. He nodded. The well out back is where I left the rest of me. I didn't put it there. He did. But it was mine to begin with. The gravedigger folded the letter slowly. His hands were shaking now. She said that was the last thing she wrote. He nodded. The girl walked to the fireplace, touched the bricks like she was listening. She said the walls still echo. He stood. I didn't know how to help. She said keeping the letter helped. I should have done more. She said you still can. He looked at the letter. How? She said show it. To who? To everyone. He shook his head. They won't believe a letter. She said they already believe the lies. He set the letter on the table. She said the man who wrote reports burned his copy. He nodded. That sounds right. She said your voice was the first soft one she ever heard after. I buried her wrong. She said you buried her kind. He looked at her. That doesn't fix anything. No. But it's something. The wind hit the side of the house. A long creak traveled through the roof. She said someone else wrote her name down. Who? She doesn't know. The gravedigger sat again. She said it's in a ledger. Where? She thinks the sheriff has it. He didn't reply. She said the badge has her memory under it. He looked at the fire. She said your hands are still clean. They don't feel that way. She said you were the last person to speak her name. He closed his eyes. Ruth. She nodded. She heard it. He exhaled. Can I keep the letter? She asked. No. Why? Because it belongs in the dirt. She said that's where she wants it read next. He nodded slowly. At the grave. She said in it. In it. She said words sink better than bodies. He looked again at the letter. Then we'll bury it properly. She smiled, just barely. She said thank you. The first scream came before dawn. Then the bell. Then the smoke. By the time the gravedigger stepped onto the porch, the sky. Behind town was bleeding orange. He didn't speak. The girl was already outside, eyes fixed on the horizon. She said it's not the first time, she whispered. He grabbed his coat. She said fire always comes when they lie. They didn't run. They walked, past the fields, past the whispering corn, past fences the sheriff's men used to lean on. The smoke curled like it knew the way. By the time they reached the square, a crowd had gathered. The governor's barn was already half gone. Flames snapped at the beams like they'd been waiting years. The sheriff barked orders. His men hauled buckets. No one looked each other in the eye. "She said this is how it starts," the girl said. He nodded. "She said when the walls burn, the paper burns too." One of the deputies spotted them. "Keep her back." "She ain't the fire," the gravedigger said. "She's bad luck." "She's a memory." The sheriff turned, his face red from heat or rage, maybe both. "You brought her here?" "She came. She needs to leave. She said she already saw this in her dreams." The sheriff stepped closer. "Get her away from this." The girl didn't move. "She said this was where they brought her first." He froze. "She said she was 12. Someone in the crowd murmured. "She said he waited until the lanterns went out." The governor's wife screamed behind them. "Not again! Not again!" The sheriff turned. "Get her out of here." The gravedigger didn't flinch. "Why burn it if there's nothing to hide?" Smoke swallowed the roof. "She said the ledger's inside," the girl said. "The one with her name." The sheriff stepped back. "There's no ledger." "She said it had 2 names on each line." The girl's voice dropped. "One for the girl, one for the man." The townsfolk turned to stare. "She said they signed." "That's a lie," the sheriff hissed. "She said she saw his name first." A gust sent ash across the dirt. It clung to the sheriff's badge. "She said his signature was crooked. She said he wrote it fast, like he was used to it." The sheriff looked at the fire. "It's gone now." "Not to her," the girl said. "She said she doesn't need pages. She remembers the weight." The fire cracked like bones. The roof caved. "She said that sound was the same one her neck made." Someone whispered a prayer. The girl turned to the crowd. "She said you all knew." Murmurs rippled. Feet shuffled. No one met her eyes. "She said they always walked her home in pairs." She said one held the lamp. The other held her arm. The wind changed again. Smoke pushed into their faces. "She said the barn was built over the old graveyard." "She said you can still hear them below." The sheriff's voice was hoarse. "She's making this up. She's digging it up," the gravedigger said. "She said the ground doesn't forget heat." She said the barn was built with silence. A scream came from inside the flames. No one moved. Then another. And another. "They're gone," someone whispered. "They ain't," the girl said. "They're remembering." The governor appeared on horseback, flanked by his men. He dismounted fast, eyes wide. "What the hell happened?" The sheriff walked up. "We think it was sabotage." "By who?" He glanced at the girl. The governor's eyes followed. "Her? She's stirring ghosts." "She's 10, the gravedigger said. "She's dangerous. She's justice." "She's lying," the sheriff said. "She's survived," the girl replied. The governor stepped forward. "You got no place here." "She said she used to sleep in the hayloft." "No. She said she was dragged down by your man." The sheriff raised his voice. "That's enough." "She said she saw you watching." The governor's hand twitched. "She said you turned away." A deputy stepped forward. "Governor!" "Shut up," the governor barked. "She said your name was 3rd on the ledger. She said you wrote in ink the same color as blood." Gasps spread. Eyes narrowed. "She said she still hears you." "You don't know anything," the sheriff snapped. "She said you laughed. She said it sounded like someone choking." The fire snapped again. "She said the barn was where hope went to die." The governor walked away. The girl followed with her eyes. "She said his boots never touched dirt." She said he always had someone else dig. The crowd broke open. Quiet arguments, quick exits. The smoke drifted sideways now. "She said it's done." The sheriff turned. "What is?" "The hiding." He stepped forward. "She still can't prove anything." The gravedigger held up the letter. "What's that?" Her words. "You can't." She said it's time. "You'll burn with it." She said that's how truth survives. He walked to the flame line. "Hold the letter just close enough." "Don't," the sheriff warned. She said one spark's enough. He lowered it. The sheriff looked around. No one moved to help him. No one stood with him. She said the fire's only just begun. The sheriff looked at the sky. She said you'll sleep in the same dirt. She said no badge stops rot. The gravedigger turned to the girl. "Ready?" She nodded. "Where to?" She said, "Back to the grave." They walked slowly. The fire burned behind them. The town stayed silent. By morning, the smoke had turned the sky a dull gray. The fire was out, but the town wasn't. The girl stood at the edge of the cornfield. Same dress, same eyes. Her hand rested on the broken gate like she was waiting for it to open by itself. She said, "Today's the day," she whispered. The gravedigger came up behind her. "You sure?" She said, "The ground is soft now." He followed her to the house. The boards creaked like old bones. Dust curled in corners that hadn't seen breath in years. She said, "It's still under the boards," the girl said. The gravedigger crossed the back room slowly. "You talking about the well?" She nodded. She said they never sealed it right. He stared through the warped doorway. The well sat crooked in the earth, boards nailed haphazard over the mouth like an afterthought. She said it never stopped breathing. He didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. She said, "We won't dig this time." "Who does?" "The wind." He stepped onto the porch and crouched beside the boards. Hammer marks showed in the wood, fast, panicked. She said, "Someone came back later. I tried to shut it up." He tested the nails. Loose, old. "You want me to pull it?" She said, "It's ready." He took the claw end of his shovel and slipped it under the first nail. The girl didn't flinch. The first board came up easily. Then the second, then the third cracked in half. Beneath it, a square hole gaped into darkness. Water glistened at the bottom. She said, "It's shallow now." He leaned over, careful. "That's not water." The girl stepped beside him. She said, "It's oil and blood." The smell rose slowly. Sweet rot, wet soil, old clothes. He lowered the lantern. Something shifted. "What was that?" he asked. She said, "She's moving." He looked again. Below, tangled in the mud, a shape surfaced, pale, rounded, a bone, then another, smaller, thinner. He staggered back. She said they come in pairs. He said nothing. She stared down. She said she remembers the sound. What sound? When they dropped her in. He wiped his hands on his coat. She said her back broke first. Footsteps behind them. They turned. A small crowd had formed. Men, women, faces lined with dust and doubt. "What's this?" one called out. The girl didn't answer. The gravedigger stepped forward. "The well's open." "You had no right," someone said. She said, "The truth doesn't need permission." "Are you stirring up ghosts again?" "She never left." A woman pushed through the crowd. Her voice is low. "Is that what I think it is?" The gravedigger didn't speak. She said the small one was hers. The girl whispered. Gasps rippled. Another woman stepped closer. "That's not possible." She said, "You remember the winter that happened." A man flinched. "Stop." She said, "You saw the bruises." "You don't know what you're saying." She said, "You did too." A murmur started. Old names, unspoken stories, the way folks had vanished, quiet and without search. "Where's the sheriff?" someone shouted. "He's coming," another said. "He always comes late." "He won't stop this," the girl said. She said the well already spoke. The gravedigger stared into the dark. "There's more down there." "How many?" someone asked. She said, "Enough." The sheriff arrived on horseback, alone, gun at his hip. "What's going on here?" Nobody answered. He saw the well, the boards, the bones. "No," he muttered. "You were told—" She said this is where she screamed. The girl cut in. He froze. She said your hands were the last ones she felt. I wasn't there. She said your breath hit her neck. Voices rose. Arguments, denials. She's lying. She's a child. She remembers too much. She remembers just enough, the gravedigger said. The sheriff stepped forward. "You don't know what this'll do." She said it's already done. "You think this makes it right?" She said justice isn't clean. He turned to the crowd. "You gonna believe her?" No one answered. She said she was buried here, the girl whispered. She said she wasn't alone. The sheriff pulled his gun. "Back away." She said you always use your hand second. He pointed it at her. The gravedigger stepped in front. "You'll have to shoot through me." She said you never had the guts. "Move." "No." The crowd moved closer. The sheriff's gun wavered, then dropped an inch, then lower. He stepped back. "You'll regret this." She said you already do. He turned and left. No one followed. The gravedigger turned to the girl. "What now?" She said it needs to be emptied. All of it? She said every bone counts. They brought ropes, buckets, quiet voices, careful hands. The first skull was small, the second crushed. The third still wore a ribbon. Women wept. Men stared at the dirt. She said names don't matter now, the girl whispered. She said memory is heavier. The sun moved overhead. They kept digging. By dusk, a pile had formed, cleaned by water, counted 14. She said that's not all, the girl said. The gravedigger leaned against the well. You sure? She said one's missing. Which? Hers. They looked again. One last sweep. Under the waterline, caught in the stones, something shimmered. He reached in. Pulled slow. A necklace. Broken chain. Heart-shaped locket. Rusted. The girl took it. She said this is hers. Inside, a name was scratched. Barely legible. Ruth. The crowd fell silent. She said, now you know. The gravedigger looked around. No one moved. No one denied. She said, it's time. Time for what? She said, bury them again. He stared at the pile. All of them. She said, together. He nodded. They dug a wide hole near the house. One by one, the bones were lowered. No coffins, just cloth. Just names in there. Heads. The locket went last. She said, thank you. The dirt closed soft. She said now she can sleep. They buried the last bone by nightfall. No markers, no hymns, just dirt and the sound of breath. Then silence. The girl stood beside the fresh grave. Bare feet, pale dress. Her fingers stained the earth. She said now it's time, she whispered. The grave digger stepped beside her. For what? She said the names come next. You sure? She said they always do. He looked toward the edge of the graveyard. Lanterns bobbed in the dark. People were coming. Again. The sheriff walked at the front, gun on one hip, badge polished like it hadn't been for years. Behind him, the governor's men, the preacher, 2 deputies, and the rest. Old names, old faces. You call this a trial? Someone asked. No, the girl said. She called it remembering. The sheriff stepped forward. You need to stop. She said you should listen. I've listened enough. She said you never did. We're not doing this. He said, louder. You came, the girl whispered. That means you already knew. I came to stop this madness. She said madness is silence. He reached for his badge. You don't know what this means. She said it's made of her bones. He paused. Just a second. She said it's heavy because you wear it. The grave digger held his breath. The crowd shifted. Someone whispered a name. The girl raised her voice. She said the first man wore red boots. A man stepped back. That's not true. She said he laughed after. She's lying. She said he said, no one will find you. That wasn't me. She remembers the smell, gasps. Faces turned. The man stepped deeper into the shadows. The girl turned to the next. She said the second man had a limp. Another man flinched. She said he held the door shut. She doesn't know what she's saying. She said you hummed. The man reached for his belt. She said your hand shook, but you stayed. She's making it up. She said your breath fogged the window. He turned, walked off into the dark. No one followed. She said the third man was the quiet one. A name rang out. That's Marshall. He's dead. She said that's why it's quieter now. The sheriff stepped closer. You're going to tear this town apart. She said it's already torn. You don't know what this'll cost. She said she paid first. The governor raised his voice. You're playing with fire. She said she already burned. She's a child. She's a witness. She wasn't even born. She was buried with her. The sheriff turned to the preacher. Say something. The preacher didn't move. She said he prayed after, the girl said. Don't, the preacher whispered. She said he looked at her and said, Amen. That's not. She said it was the only word he gave her. The preacher stepped back. She faced the sheriff again. She said your voice changed when you closed the lid. You weren't there. She said you were. He looked down. His boots were sinking into the dirt. She said the fifth man didn't touch her. He looked up. Then why name him? She said he watched. Sometimes that's all you can do. She said that's the worst thing. Voices rose. He was just a boy then. He couldn't stop it. He was scared. She was too, the girl said. And she was smaller. A deputy stepped forward. This ain't justice. She said it's not revenge either. Then what is it? Truth. You're not the judge. She said she doesn't need to be. Guns showed, not raised, just visible. The girl didn't flinch. She said the sheriff dropped his badge in the dirt once. That's not true. She said it landed on her shoe. A woman gasped. She said he told her to shut up before it got real. She's making it up. She said he dug the hole himself. You don't know what that does to a man. She said you didn't cry until after. He shouted, "Stop!" She stepped forward. She said you said her name wrong when you buried her. He pulled his gun. The crowd went still. The gravedigger stepped between them. You shoot her, you prove her right. I'll be ending this. No, the girl said. You'll be joining it. She said bullets don't silence bones. The preacher knelt, whispered something. The governor looked around. You're all gonna let her do this. No one answered. She said the silence was worse than the pain. The sheriff lowered the gun. She said the badge won't save you now. He unpinned it. Let it fall. It hit the dirt with a soft thud. She said, now we know. The crowd broke. Some walked away. Some cried. Some dropped their hats. Some whispered names they hadn't in years. The girl sat on the grave. She said, this is where truth lives. The gravedigger sat beside her. She said you were the only one who ever looked. He didn't speak. She said it's your turn now. To do what? To stay quiet. He nodded. They sat as the grave cooled. The wind didn't blow. The guns were gone. So were the lies. The field was quiet. The grave is still fresh. The dirt is dark. No markers. No names. Just the girl. Kneeling. She hummed something low. Off key. Wavering like it hadn't been sung right in years. The gravedigger stood a few steps back. Hat in his hands. His boots planted. Heavy. She said, this is where it ends. The girl whispered. He nodded. I know. She said, it's not the kind of end you feel. What kind is it? She said, it's the kind you bury. The wind shifted. The sheriff walked alone. No badge, no gun, just him. The coat is open, dust on his sleeves, breathing hard. He stopped at the edge of the grave. No one spoke. The girl kept humming. She said you'd come like this. The sheriff looked down at the dirt. I don't have anything left. She said that's why it worked. He stepped closer. You think I didn't carry it? She said you buried her twice. I was young. She said you weren't. She said you looked straight at her and blinked. He knelt, slowly. I thought she'd forget. She remembered every second. He reached out a hand toward the grave. It trembled. She said your hands didn't shake then. His fingers touched the edge of the dirt. I can't fix it. She said you weren't supposed to. I'm sorry. The girl looked at him. She said she doesn't want to apologize. Then what? She said she wants the truth. He looked at the sky, eyes glassy. I was scared. She said you weren't. I didn't know how to stop them. She said you told them when to start. The wind stopped. The field held still. The gravedigger stepped forward, unfolded the letter. You read it once, the girl said. He nodded. Read it again. He looked down at the paper, then at the hole. No, he said. She doesn't need it said again. The girl didn't answer. He folded it once more. I walked to the grave. She said words belong where pain started. He crouched, set the letter inside, pressed it into the dirt, then stood. The girl looked at the sheriff. She said, now it's your turn. He shook his head. I don't know what to do. She said, kneel. He did. She said, listen. He did. She said, you'll hear it. The girl turned back to the grave and sang. It wasn't a song people knew. No words, just pieces, just sounds like rocking, like waiting, like time bending. The sheriff's head dropped. The gravedigger looked down. The song cracked once. Then it was quiet. The girl whispered. She said, it's done. They stood. She said she's not lonely now. The sheriff stayed on his knees. Will she forgive me? She said forgiveness is for children. Then what do I do? Wait. For what? She said, you'll know. She walked to the gravedigger. She said, I don't need to dig anymore. He nodded. Then what do I do? He looked at her. You live. She reached down, took a handful of dirt, dropped it on the grave. She said, I'll wait here. He looked at her. For who? She said someone always comes. The wind picked up again. The sheriff stayed kneeling. The gravedigger turned away. The girl sat back down, cross-legged, calm. The grave didn't echo. It was held, and for the first time, it didn't take. It gave.